Hello, dear students. Let us understand about trade credit in this session. So, trade credit. Term itself, we can clearly understand that trade is nothing but goods, and credit is you're purchasing goods on credit basis, not on cash basis. So, meaning is given here as yes, it is an agreement made between two business where customers can make purchases without making any cash payment. So, without giving any cash, like they can make the process of purchasing as well as selling. Imagine that there are two parties, one is buyer, another one is seller. Now, trade trading is happening on credit basis. Okay, so on that time period, it may be 30 days or 60 days or even 90 days. Okay, the transaction is clearly mentioned in the invoice. And why they are doing this trade credit is, see, buyer is ready to buy and seller he is also ready to sell. So both the parties they want to do transactions. Problem here is buyer he is not having funds or cash to provide it to the seller for the goods that what seller is ready to give. So in this scenario, seller can sell the goods to the buyer. Later, buyer can make the payment to the seller. And the time period that later, that is what here mentioned it as 30, 60 or 90 days. Okay, after getting the goods from the seller, buyer can make the payment after later time period. So diagram is given here as, so one is buyer, another party is seller. So goods are delivered. So that is what the seller, and the opposite side buyer, that is payment sent at a later date. So readily payment is not made to the seller after some certain period of time. So this buyer is making the payment to the seller. And what is the purpose? This increases the working capital. See, buyer he cannot be like it's his both the buyer as well as the seller, their production, their regular operations has to be happened. Okay, for that, for increasing that working capital. Okay, so definitely the process, this trade credit, it supports a lot. They cannot simply sit idle. So since you are not making the payment, I cannot sell the goods, not like that. Anyhow later he is going to get the payment, again he need to do the production. So there are so many processes happening. Okay, so this obviously increases the working capital, and even though it is not directly cash, so this is also a source of finance. Trade credit also comes under the source of finance. Major types is open account, trade acceptance, and next is promissory note. Open account is something that all the small businesses comes under this category, where they will not be signed by buyer or else seller. These parties they will not sign any formal agreements. So without signing the documents, this process, trade credit process, will be happen, and that is why it is called as open account. Okay, all the small business level they will be doing this. And next is trade acceptance. Somehow formal agreement is made in this type, that is trade acceptance, stating that before the seller is shipping the goods to the buyer, so buyer must sign the agreement. Yes, after 60 days or 90 days, 90th day I'll make my payment. That sign this buyer has to be done. So that is what a formal agreement is happened in this trade acceptance. And next is promissory note is also same like trade acceptance. Here also formal agreement will be there. Promissory note is usually called as debt instrument, where later some date this buyer will make the payment to the seller. So that concept is actually called as see, buyer is giving some promise to the seller. in a written document. Okay, and we can able to see here as trade creditors with a period of, say for example, 14 days till 90 days. Advantages is it is equivalent to a loan from the supplier and it is interest free. Next is companies, usually they will use this for their day-to-day operations of the business. Next, disadvantages is like, so in case buyer is not able to make the payment, definitely he has to face the consequences for future orders, and some discounts is also provided. So that is what both advantage as well as disadvantage we need to face in this trade credit. Thank you.